poor children, you're going to get the whole range of social problems that are associated with poverty. We have tried, in fact, made enormous efforts over the past 25 or 30 years to work on concepts like magnet schools, for example, and stuff like this. I think, as we all know, they have had limited amount of success. We are going to have, because of this, budget crisis, our options are getting even more and more constricted, as a practical matter, year by year. And I don't think there's anyone, no matter where they fall on the political spectrum, that are happy for this. But unless we have the funding to treat schools as the way they should be, it's always going to be the poor neighborhoods which suffer worst. One of the areas, and I had not thought about this before, but I was in Annapolis. I think it was the session before last, testifying on a different matter. But before me, there was a bill that scheduled that for a hearing that involved student discipline reform. And to my surprise, there were lots and lots of teachers and teachers' aides and other professional educators that came down to testify on this issue. And what they were saying was they felt that many times their hands were tied, and their educational programs, especially in the poorer schools, were being restricted because they didn't have the flexibility to deal with a very small proportion of problem students. You get the students that act out, the students that have problems that in a richer community would be dealt with by mental health and social work professionals and stuff like this, but simply are not being addressed in the community. They were saying, well, you're not going to get good teachers down here in these schools because they feel they can't control their students, and if there's a problem, the administration doesn't back them up. And here's where I parted company with them. Their view was we need to increase the ability of schools to eliminate this small minority, the problem students, through the suspension or the expulsion process, and get them out of the schools. I think they've identified the problem, but I don't agree with the solution. My solution: I don't believe that misbehaving students, especially in the let's say the secondary schools, where a dropout problem will have such a catastrophic, effect on a young man or woman's life. I don't think encouraging these problem students to stay away from school really is the solution. Here's the solution, and it's actually been proposed in a couple of other states. And this is, and it needs to be done at the state level because the local governments and the school districts don't have the authority to do this. This is when you have a situation with a student, especially middle school, secondary school, that the student is acting out, and it's not a let's say a medical problem. It's a real discipline problem. You don't throw the kid out of school or expel them. You have a process basically where it's sort of like a parent subpoena, that if the child engages in this disruptive activity, the school, with due process and notice and everything else, can essentially issue a subpoena compelling the parent to come to school with the child until the problem is resolved. And I don't know about you, I've seen tough kids. I grew up in a school where there were, was not the richest school by a long shot, working class kids, etc. And there is nothing more salutary effect on on the behavior of this kids than have to spend, a day, a couple days, even in bad cases, a week holding their parents' hands as they go from class to class, because the parent is not going to stand for it. I don't care whether they love their kid or they just sort of, it's more problematic. They do not want to be off work spending time with the kids, and so they are going to work on the problem 24/7. And the kid does not want to have his or her dad or mom literally holding hands with them as they walk around the campus. It would. You don't have to do this across the board. Once the kids in the school see that this is what the consequence is going to be, the fence centers I think tend to shape up. So the investment in this kind of program is basically the cost of the sheriff or the school truant officer's time to ensure that the parent is present in the school. But it also has the very important benefit of making sure that these kids who, they may be troubled at this time of life, but they've got their whole life ahead of them, remain in school, remain in the educational process, and go on. Let's say if they're not going to be the class valedictorian, at least they're not going to be taking graduate courses in the College of Hard Knocks up there in the Jessup Correctional Institution. So these are the kind of thinking out of the box ideas that I will be looking for until we can get our state economy back in shape where we're generating the kind of money that we need to make these investments in the schools. The other issue is, and this is a very difficult issue and controversial issue, the largest growing population of what I would call special needs students. And I define this broadly to mean students who need special assistance that costs far above what we have to invest in the majority of students, are the children of illegal aliens who are here in the state. Because of their language background, many times because of the cultural background. These students require, and under our current laws, are in many ways entitled to the kind of investment that we would give to say a developmentally disabled American student. So the way that and like I say, every time you have to pay 3 times the state per student investment rate in one of these students, in these hard times, that's a zero-sum game. That means we're disinvesting in a poor American student. The federal government says you cannot deny these students enrollment, and until that law, the Supreme Court changes that law, we'll have to live with it. But one of the important reasons that we need to discourage the magnet of illegal employment is because it brings with it this whole unfunded mandate of this large and growing population of young people who require, exceptionally high levels of pure pupil investment. And it's a tough choice, but again, I think we have to look at it. If we disinvest in our disadvantaged, in our poorest citizen and legal immigrant students, that's wrong. Those folks, in my view, morally, ethically, practically, are where we should be focusing the limited amount of money that we do have.
Well, Mr. Hethmon, it's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely, Fosse. This has been great for me. I think this is a great project you've got there, and it's been educational for me as well. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Now, you guys can catch all his information at MikeHethmon.com, and you can, for his information, also our information, you can go to onthehillmedia.com.